Welcome back, everybody, to Evil's Comics. I'm Evilmike. Today I have another Evil's Chats with you, and see, I'm always thinking about ideas. I got videos on videos, and I really do. I'm trying not to put out so many so I don't oversaturate myself. But I've actually shot a whole bunch and have some just sitting there. In case I run out of current ideas, I got backup stuff. But today, you know, I was really thinking, and I've been thinking this along, but, you know, y'all don't really know me. You know, you didn't know who Evilmike is, you know, and, yeah, my love for comics is there. Yes, I'm picking up weekly comics and, you know, dollar bin, you know, pickups, that kind of stuff, but, you don't really know the guy that I am, the man that I've grown to be. And it always strikes me as a little odd with a lot of YouTubers is you might have a great voice, you might have great topics and great, you know, stuff to show off, but I can tell you some of my favorite YouTubers, they just they have all that, and then there's a personality that goes with it. Someone that I'm going to do a video on very soon, but something that I get from him is he just makes you feel like a friend. And here at Evil Comics, that's what I'm trying to achieve as well. I wouldn't say I'm trying to copy it, but I mean, it just makes good sense. I mean, I want y'all to come back and listen to my stories and, you know, look at what I have to show, you know. So I'm always going to be throwing bits and pieces of my life in there. But I felt like, hey, why not do a whole chat thing and tell you a little story? I've told y'all one before. This one's not going to be comedy related, more on the discrimination type of nature. And I'm gonna have to say my point of the video is, you know, be careful about, you know, who you discriminate upon, towards, behind backs, you know, stuff like that. My background is not the best. I have some of the, you know, people hear my story and they're usually amazed. And they get pissed off, not at me, but people that are involved in the story. I've mentioned my comic book collection has been stolen. I think that's one of the more like things that tug at my soul, but it's not like the biggest heart you know, break I've ever suffered. There's things about me that I just haven't revealed, and some things I'm just not 100% comfortable with revealing them yet. But we'll get there together, and that's kind of my point. I want us to grow together. And yes, comics are the mainstay, but I'm going to branch out eventually. I'm going to do movies. I'm going to do, you know, teaser reactions, all, you know, a lot of different stuff, because I like that kind of stuff. And I watch these guys, and I can do a better job. I'm not being egotistic or anything, but sometimes I feel like, why haven't I stepped up? I'm already entrenched in this world. Like, I already have most of the times all this information, and sometimes beforehand. Why not do the same thing? And that's kind of why I started this channel. I was already picking up comics, I'm already reading them, you know, why not review them and then show you what I got, you know. I like that. I watch a lot of y'all, a lot of what y'all pick up, a lot of, and I'm talking to YouTubers, but of course I can't see you at home or on your phone, but I can see you. But you never know. But today it's more of a background story. So I've mentioned that I started collecting comics when I was 4. Now, I want to say I really started reading when I was 5, and it, you know, I was still a child, so it wasn't like I was able to comprehend adult, you know, contemplations within the comics and stuff. But comics were just how I got into reading. Now, I'm a huge reader. I love reading. I pride myself on it. Someone in particular, and I'm not trying to name drop anybody this video, but you know, I made a comment, you know, about texting, and they were worried that if they sent too long of a text, it would bother me. And I'm like, bro, I read comics and books, like, on the real. I like reading, especially if it's well written. And man, from the person who made this comment, I was like, boy, I would suck up any of your writing. You're pretty much a writer. But I started, my parents were poor, and they got me into comics. And back then in the 80s, when I grew up, '84 comics were still $1.75. Dollar bins back there were like half that. It was like 50 cents bins. Most of my birthday presents growing up, like one of my favorite ones from my dad was it was a laundry box, just a regular box like this size of laundry soap, the old school powder, and of course it was cleaned out or whatever, and I think he had like plastic lining, but inside was just bags of plastic army men that you get at the dollar store. It was the same thing back then it is now. And that was my big gift growing up. But I mean, it wasn't just a gift. He like pulled it out and played with me. And me and my dad, I love my dad, but he's just not a dad you want. He was never there. My dad was one of those cool guys where he was so cool he didn't really have time for his kids, I guess. It sounds really mean, but I do love my dad. I have him up on a pedestal. Honestly, he's like right there next to Arnold Schwarzenegger in my eyes. So I got into reading, and my parents' way of getting me to read was they buy me comics, because I was already kind of leaning that way. I was watching, Saturday morning cartoons. Come on, we had He-Man, Ninja Turtle. The 80s were popping. It was all about characters, and my dad was already kind of a figure collector, because he had an old G.I. Joe collection. I'm talking about Barbie size G.I. Joes. He had an old Hot Wheel collection, and he had like an old DC, like I think it was Amigo Toys that did the original lines from the 30s or whatever it was, the 40s, but they looked like clay, and it wasn't really a doll. But he had like a Flash and I think a Superman, and I remember as a kid playing with those, and it got me into comics. But I remember we used to stop at gas station, they used to sell comics everywhere in the 80s, but everywhere we'd stop, my parents would pick me up a couple books, and I never really had family vacations. We went to, grew up here in Houston, Sugarland and Katy, but anyways, not really family vacations, but we would travel like San Antonio or Galveston and rent a lake house, which back then it wasn't that expensive, or go to New Braunfels, which I love New Braunfels to this day. If you've never been to Texas, go to New Braunfels, it's just amazing. We did trips like that, in the car kind of stuff. So they would buy me like a stack of comics, and it was usually like $10. To me, it was like, wow, that's a lot of comics, And back then, when I was 4 or 5, I was just flipping through, looking at the art, and that to me was the most amazing thing. And I remember around like 6 or 7 is really when I really started reading and putting things together. And we're talking about kindergarten, 1st grade. Now, in 1st grade is where my story's kind of taking place, because around 1st grade, I met my favorite person in the world, and she passed away, rest in peace. But my Aunt Nancy was to date my most favorite person in the world. She got me into reading books, she got me into music. I was into music, but she opened my mind to different types of music, and it was amazing to me. Like Led Zeppelin and Queen, when I was listening to like Aerosmith and Prince, and it was just, she had branched me off in different directions. But she was the reason I developed my love for Stephen King. Now, I read a lot of different authors, but I love Stephen King. It doesn't matter what book. I can pick up any of his books and I love them. One of my quests in life is trying to read all his books, and this motherfucker won't stop. He keeps pumping out books. It's like 6, 7 a year now. And I read a lot of books, so he's not, I can't, and I do not buy books when they come out, bargain hunter. But when I do get around, I'm up there. I want to say I'm like 80% of done reading all his books, but he's just got a massive collection. But as an author, he's definitely like my favorite author. He's definitely my favorite person, like living. Everybody I've ever mentioned, Stephen King is by far, like, somebody that I would literally, give fingers or my arm or somebody just to meet and shake his hand and be like, thank you, for what you've done for me. And you don't know who I am, but, just who you are and what you've given the world, and what other people behind me will get to experience. But he really developed my love of reading through my Aunt Nancy, and she had given me, my first book was Eyes of the Dragon. I got it at the end of 1st grade, going into 2nd grade, and I was already reading big books. Yes, big books. I spent the whole summer, and it took me the whole summer to read. And I remember reading most of it in the back of my grandmother's camper, like an 80s style like pickup truck that just had one of those attachment campers. And you know, here in Houston, Texas, it's hot as hell, but I didn't care. I sat back there just, you know, reading the book. So I had finished the book in the summer and started the second grade, and my Aunt Nancy had given me this book, and she told me that the other stories in this book would be too advanced for me, that I needed to start at the body. And if y'all don't know, the body is the story that surrounds Stand By Me. And this is another Easter egg, but this is the physical book that she gave me all the way back then in 1987 when this book came out. Now this isn't anything special. It's like a I think it's called a library edition or something like that, where they like, you know, paste the I can't remember. It's like a fan club edition or something like that. It might be worth money. I don't even know. I love the body. It's one of my favorite stories. Stand By Me, if you've never seen it. It's one of my favorite Stephen King movies. It's also one of my favorite 80s movies. My life was a little similar to the body, and because I was poor and everything, and so I spent a lot of time, you know, here in Houston, and we don't have a lot of forest or woods or anything. We're more of a city. But we still do have areas of mass acres and farmland and forest. And so, I mean, I explored the hell. You know, I hung out in bayous and you know, in the woods and stuff like that. And I will say one of my earliest and scarier encounters was something similar to the body. And me and my group of friends, you know, found a creepy tree house in the woods. I think we were like 9, and I had like 5 friends with me. We had gone through there a bunch, but if you ever been in the forest, I mean, you get lost easily. Like there is, I mean, it's hard to cover everything. We found like a tree house kind of thing in the middle of the forest, but like we ended up finding the worst thing you could imagine. But it was a dead body, and he had been there a while, decomposed. I didn't know it. We saw it and took off running. We alerted the authorities, and they found out it was like a homeless person that had just ended up there and died of starvation, something like that. Granted, I'm 9 years old. I don't remember the complete whole story, but I remember the you know, I was the kid that walked into the little tree house to figure out what was going on, because we walked in and his legs were just, you know, kind of hanging out the door. It looked like he was sleeping, honestly. That's what I thought. But I started reading this in 2nd grade, and like I said, I'd kind of already done a lot of that. I grew up hunting. I think my dad took me hunting the first time when I was 4. Now, I didn't get to handle a pistol or a rifle or anything until I was much older. My parents are very strict in certain things, but I started reading this at the beginning of the 2nd year, and I took it to school. And I had it in my backpack, and I didn't even realize what I had done at the time. I found out later on. You know, but I'm in like 2nd grade, and it was like story time, and we were allowed to grab a book, and my teacher like had told us, hey, is there a book on the shelf that you wanted to read? And I said no, but I have one in my backpack. And she was like, okay, go grab it. So I went and grabbed, you know, the book and brought it out, and I started reading it. And the teacher kind of smiled at me, and she took off outside the class. I didn't think anything of it. So about 20 minutes later, the teacher, not the teacher, but I get a call on the overhead, and we've all been to school, right? And Michael Moore, can you please come to the principal's office? And so I go into the principal's office, and I'm basically getting in trouble because I was reading an adult book at school in 2nd grade. And I've always been an intelligent kid. I've always loved debating, seeing sides that people don't see, and my argument was like, you're going to punish me for reading a book. Now, at the time, I think it was on their ban list that they couldn't have it in school or something like that. I mean, some of the other stories are adult, The Shawshank Redemption, Apt Pupil. I love all these stories, but they're not exactly kids' stories. But a lot of people have this misconception that Stephen King is a horror author, because back then that was, you're reading a horror author, He has like 2 or 3 scary tales in his whole collection. He's not really a horror author. He just focuses on the weird and strange. My love for him is just different. It's more his descriptiveness and his ability to take you to any world he wants you to. I mean, you can't stop it. You start reading it, and he takes you there, and then that's Stephen King. the man, in my opinion, is God, you know, and his writing craft and everything, and has not stopped. I mean, and time has not. I mean, many authors will tell you that one of their most favorite books is his book on writing. It's called On Writing by Stephen King. I've read it myself. It's amazing. But back to the story, like, I got in trouble that day because I was reading this book, and they felt like it was too inappropriate for my age, and I don't even think they brought up the ban part of it, because I don't think I would have understand why, you know, the banning part. I was too young. But I always thought that was really weird that they would, you know, that I would get in trouble for reading a book, and then on top of that, way ahead of my level. Now, granted, the next year, that year, because of that incident, they bumped me up to like advanced, where I was already doing like 4th grade, like English, because they realized I was already at a much greater reading level than a lot of kids. Not to say I'm super advanced or nothing, I'm not. I just took to reading. Something similar happened to my son when he was around, I want to say 13, in middle school. And my son was always an A student. Go Adrian. I pride myself on it. I was really scared. I was not an all A student, but my son Adrian it made me proud. My daughter was a really good student too, and she was just kind of more me in the conduct area. I'm very jokey. I was a class clown. I was a very good student. You know, I wouldn't say all A's, but A's, B's. I was, you know, honor classes most part. But they had called it was actually one of the few times that I got called to the principal's office for either one of my kids. Now, my daughter, all through elementary, I got called in. But my son was a different story. I never got called to school. I mean, every time we met the teachers, everything was golden. I mean, he was like a nice student to have in the class. He was intelligent. Then I got to like middle school, and I got called in this parent-teacher's office, and they were mad at, they were disciplining him because he wasn't being so outspoken. He, you know, in class discussions, he was very quiet and calm and collected. But my kid graduated like all honors. You know, nothing but A's and nothing but, and it wasn't just like on certain things. I mean, he was good at PE, he was good, you know, in all aspects of what he got into, and it was all his work. He put in a lot of work, and I wish I would have done the same when I was in school. But the one time I got called into the teacher's office, I was really confused because I'd never been called in before. I went in there with my now ex-wife, and we sat down, and this is a side note, I live in another state. He was in New Mexico, I'm in Texas, so I had to fly there for that parent-teacher conference, and I was told that I had to be there. They did not get the point that I lived in another state. So I fly all the way there, and I go to this teacher's conference, and they're disciplining my son because he's not an outspoken person. They want him to participate more verbally. Well, I got mad and pissed off, showed him the plane ticket, and I went on a full-on rant. I was like, this is what you're calling me down here from another state? I was all like, bro, there's other ways you could have approached this. Second, you know, you're going to discipline a kid, you know, an excellent student, he doesn't, you know, because he's not outspoken. I mean, some of the greatest minds in this world are like that. You know, I think all of the most famous geniuses that you can think of and imagine, they're all like awkward and weird and silent and to themselves. There's that complex where they feel like other people won't understand them. They're so far advanced. I'm not saying my son's like that. He's not like that. But, you know, to have me go to that teacher conference, and that's what you were calling my son in, it is kind of like my story. You know, it was a real story that I remember her name to this day, and I don't remember too many teachers, but Mrs. Potter. I mean, she always left a bad taste in my mouth. I'm so glad it didn't like stain, you know, my love for reading. Like, I continue to read. There was a couple times I actually brought more adult books just to kind of, because I felt like I was doing the right thing. I was reading. I grew up in a really poor neighborhood, like in Houston, one of the worst. I love it. It's part of my upbringing, but at the same time, like, I looked around at the other kids and I was the only one reading. It's honestly one of the reasons I was bullied and hated on by a lot of kids, because they would come over to my house and I had my collection like this, and that they didn't understand that. I got picked on and bullied for one because I'm not a big guy, but I would say I'm more than normal size. But middle school and elementary, I was a little bitty dude, you know. That's me. I mean, and I grew into all this evilness, you know what I'm saying? I was a little innocent sucker back then. I wasn't ever innocent. I earned my nickname. But I don't know, this is just my topic. You know, be careful, you know, especially like teachers or moms or parents, you know, just be careful the little things you do with, you know, kids, and especially if they're already expressing a love for something, why down them? Why not encourage them? Maybe, you know, maybe there was a different path where she was like, okay, well, that's a great book. You know, you might have to leave that at home. Maybe, well, here's a good book that you could read. I love that read. I read it the other day, you know. You know, some on those means, you know, it was just, I mean, I literally got in trouble for that book. I mean, I think I got a week's suspension because of that. Reading a book, right? I don't know. Little story, a little more to get to know me. Hope you all have a wonderful day. I know it's a little downing on the story. I don't want y'all to think that I'm just, you know, don't think that. I want you to, I'm just different parts of my story. This is something that I've had in my collection for a long time, and it's something kind of cool. I don't have too many things that have stuck around due to certain events. But, hey, I'll see you next time. Probably tomorrow when I do my Marvel Indies pickup. Like, subscribe, comment. Please comment. You had any situations like this where somebody put you down for reading comics, books, any kind of nerddom? I don't know, man. Y'all have a good day.